Okay, so I wanted to take a second to explain a little bit further about interpretation and vagueness and the stuff that I just talked about in the article in the video I did just a minute ago. So I was talking to my child and I was explaining things to her, and it occurred to me that maybe I wasn't as clear as I could have been. And so I wanted to just say something added to the last video that would maybe make things a little bit more clear. So the example I gave to her is that if I tell her, go clean your room, and she goes up to her room and she looks around and says, well, it looks clean to me. And she comes back down and she says, well, it was clean to me, so yeah, it's clean. And then I go back up and I say, well, your room's not clean at all. And she says, well, let's go ask Dad. And Dad, of course, will side with his little girl and say, yeah, it looks clean. So this is basically what the government's doing, because I didn't define what clean was, or Congress doesn't define what sleep is, or they don't define what state is, or territory is, or speed, or limit, or individual, or many of these other things. They don't define them. Then each department, agency, instrumentality, contractor, etc., can interpret those to mean whatever they believe that they mean. And just like her dad would say, well, you didn't tell her exactly what you meant by clean, the courts will say, well, Congress meant for the law to be interpreted because they didn't define the words. They weren't clear. So they purposely left it up to interpretation. So if clean can be interpreted by her to be whatever she believes clean is, then she cannot be accused of having done something wrong, like not clean her room after I told her to clean her room when it was clean to the extent that she felt it was. So sleep, speed, individual, state, territory, and all these things are left to interpretation, and the courts will not see that the departments, agencies, and instrumentalities are wrong when they interpret the laws because they were never defined. So the agencies and departments and instrumentalities are not doing anything wrong when they apply the law off the military post and the seat of government, even though the Constitution states that the federal government has the right only to make laws for the seat of government and forts or places purchased for building forts. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. So if they're left to interpretation, then they're vague, and legal maxim states that vague things allow for fraud. And that's basically what he is saying in this book, Anatomy of the Law. He's talking about this system that exists not just in this country, but in other countries and in other forms of government. And so when this kind of system exists in those forms, they allow for certain people to do basically whatever they want because the things that they can do or limited to are vague. Patrick Newman on the Mises website on YouTube, or their video channel on YouTube, has a video out, which I had posted some parts of it on my channel, which states that the Constitution is a vague document. And I agree that it is a vague document in writing. However, if you apply the unwritten laws to that document, it's really not vague. But because the unwritten laws change throughout time based on culture and custom and just time passing, even our education level, can have an effect on what we view as unwritten law, then the Constitution can be interpreted to mean basically whatever it is people will allow. I have a video also on the law of grammar, and I go over in a 2-paragraph quote on people's idea of what words mean. So, for example, people have a certain idea when they're reading law what state means. However, the Mises Institute has another video out by someone else, and I don't remember his name, that states that the word state includes abstract ideas. So, for example, taxation may be an abstract idea applied to people off federal lands and outside the Constitution under titles not ever passed into law, and it's a private contract. And so it looks like it's a law, but it's really not a law, and it's a type of state, and they use the word state in many of these titles, but they don't mean an actual physical area. They're talking about an abstract state, which is also, state is related to the word status, the word situation or situs or situ, and even your political affiliation is considered a state, such as the State of the Union. Okay, so these are some things to think about when you're reading the laws. I know a lot of people do like to sit and read the codes, statutes, and regulations and try to interpret them for themselves, but it really doesn't matter how you interpret it. It matters how the court is going to side with the agency or the department or the instrumentality, how they're going to interpret it, and then how they press it upon you or outside of the legislative intent, because the courts don't care about the legislative intent when the legislature is vague. Okay, so that's your video 2 on statutes with multiple personality disorders, and I'll see y'all in the next video.